So I grew up, my mother's Sicilian, came from Sicily. My father's Greek. So I grew up very diverse. We ate good, first of all. It didn't matter what side of the family we were joining for dinner. So it was interesting growing up because you got a little bit of mixed cultures. In theory, the Greeks and Italians do a lot of things the same. So it was kind of uniformed. It's just a different way of doing it on each side. Instead of eating pasta on Sunday over here, it was eating lamb on Sunday over here. So you got the best of both worlds. So my mother was born in Sicily, and in the early 60s, my grandfather had a job lined up in America with his brother-in-law, my grandmother's brother. They had a fishing boat lined up here in San Pedro. So they left Sicily, came to America, settled in San Pedro. And my grandfather had 6 brothers. None of them ever made it to San Pedro. He was the only one that made it all the way west. Some settled in Gloucester back east. They had jobs lined up there. So they kind of got split up. But my grandfather worked as a fisherman for 30 years. My mother was the youngest of 3. She was raised in San Pedro. She grew up in San Pedro. She was 4 years old when they got here. Her brother and sister had already gone through school, and they were speaking fluent Italian. My mother was the runt of the litter, kind of the black sheep, growing up with the American lifestyle and going to Dana and ditching school and watching movies at the Warner Grand. And her sister didn't do that. They were raised to stay home and learn how to wash the clothes and cook the pasta and make the sauce. My mom was out cruising San Pedro. So my grandfather, my father's father on the Greek side, grew up in Crete, the biggest island of Greece. And he came to the United States in the teens, right around World War I, I believe right after, actually. And there wasn't a lot of work in Greece, the islands, and they were invaded, and it was just a bad time there, especially on the islands. So he came to America through Ellis Island, made his way west to Oakland, California, after a brief stint working in the coal mines in Utah. Settled in Oakland. A Greek community actually became pretty prominent there. My father was born and raised in Oakland, and in about the mid-'70s came down the coast of California to San Pedro, landed here because in Los Angeles at the time, it was growing. Housing was going up. He was a handyman, a drywall guy. He built a lot of restaurants in San Pedro. And once he got here and he started building, he never looked back, met my mom, and the rest is history. He lived his last days in Point Fermin, and his ashes are spread out in the San Pedro Bay. He loved San Pedro.